As the Ice Age tightened its grip, vast sheets of ice spread across the northern lands. The world was changing. Forests retreated, rivers shifted, and great herds of animals moved in search of fresh grazing grounds. Humanity, bound to the rhythm of nature, had no choice but to follow. The first great migrations began not with sudden leaps, but with steady steps. Families gathered their meager belongings, stone tools, fire-carrying embers, hides stretched into bundles, and moved toward horizons unknown. Each sunrise carried them farther from the lands of their ancestors, deeper into territories unmarked, untamed, and uncertain. Crossing mountains and rivers, they endured hunger, storms, and the constant shadow of predators. Yet with every challenge, they adapted. New shelters were built, new plants discovered, new hunting strategies learned. The world was not a single home, but many, and humans proved they could survive in all of them. Some groups journeyed into the heart of Europe, where caves offered refuge from bitter winds. Others pressed eastward across open steppes, following the herds that thundered endlessly over the land. Still others drifted south, where warmer climates promised abundance and safety. Every migration was more than survival, it was exploration. Horizons expanded, and with them imagination. People learned that the world was vast, filled with possibilities and dangers beyond anything their ancestors had known. And with each step, the map of humanity spread wider. Footprints pressed into snow, sand, and soil marked not only the passing of people, but the unfolding of a destiny, that humankind was a species not bound to one place, but destined to walk the...
It began in Africa, the cradle of humanity. For countless generations, humans had thrived there, hunting, gathering, and adapting to the rhythms of their homeland. But as climates shifted and herds moved, a bold decision emerged: to leave the familiar and step into the unknown. The first migrations out of Africa were cautious. Small groups followed river valleys and coastlines, carrying fire, tools, and memory. The Red Sea, at its narrowest crossing, became a passage to new lands. With each step, they carried the essence of their ancestors into uncharted worlds. Into the Middle East they traveled, where grasslands stretched wide and wild game roamed. Some continued further into Asia's vast steppes, deserts, and forests. Others pressed into Europe, facing colder climates and fierce predators, but adapting with fire, furs, and cooperation. Generations later, some followed the curve of the coastlines eastward, reaching lands no human foot had ever touched. In time, they crossed into the frozen north, braving icy winds and endless nights. And still they moved forward, step by step, until eventually their descendants would set foot even in the farthest corners of the earth. These were not just migrations. They were acts of courage. Every crossing was a gamble between survival and extinction. Yet humanity endured. With each journey, new tools were invented, new shelters built, and new knowledge carried onward. From the warmth of Africa to the frozen tundras, humanity's footprints spread like rivers across the earth. What began as survival became destiny, a species that could not be confined, forever seeking, forever moving. Long before modern humans walked the earth, there were others, small bands of early hominids, creatures who stood upright, who shaped crude stones into tools, and who dared to leave the shelter of the forests. Their world was brutal,
Vast predators ruled the plains, giant cats with saber-like teeth, towering beasts with thick hides, and birds of prey large enough to strike from the sky. To survive, our ancestors needed more than strength. They needed cooperation. The first migrations were not journeys of conquest, but of necessity. Scarcity of food, changes in climate, or the simple push of curiosity drove them forward. Step by step, they left the forests of their birth and entered open grasslands, where danger was everywhere, but opportunity waited. Fires were not yet tamed, and shelters were nothing more than branches and stone. Yet even then, they carried with them something far greater, the beginnings of awareness. They learned to work together, to share the spoils of a hunt, and to warn one another of threats. Over countless generations, these early beings spread further. Some ventured into colder lands, wrapping themselves in crude furs. Others followed rivers, discovering new hunting grounds. Each migration left traces: stone tools scattered in caves, footprints hardened in ancient mud, silent witnesses to a struggle that shaped what would one day become humanity. These were not yet humans, but they were the first travelers, the pioneers of survival, the opening chapter in the endless story of migration.
The great journey of humanity did not end with the first crossings. With every generation, people pushed farther into the unknown. Mountains rose before them, deserts stretched endlessly, and seas glimmered on the horizon. But still, they moved forward. Some followed the herds across vast steppes, chasing the rhythm of migration itself. Others ventured into dense forests, carving paths where none existed. Along icy coasts, small groups learned to fish and build shelters against the storm. Each new land brought both danger and wonder. There were predators stronger than any they had faced, climates harsher than they had known. But there were also rivers rich with fish, valleys filled with game, and caves that offered safety from the cold. It was in these endless journeys that humanity's true strength was revealed, not in weapons or fire alone, but in adaptability. People learned to survive in deserts of burning heat, in frozen tundras where the sun barely rose, and in islands surrounded by restless seas. By the time millennia had passed, humanity was everywhere, from the plains of Africa to the coasts of Asia, from the forests of Europe to the far reaches of the Pacific. Footprints marked the earth. Each step was not just survival, it was destiny unfolding.